My mom invited my unfaithful ex to my birthday, insisting we were meant to be, which led to a shocking and emotional confrontation. I'm a 24-year-old woman, and I had been in a relationship with my ex-boyfriend, a 27-year-old man, for almost a year. We broke up 2 months ago when I caught him cheating on me with one of my close friends. It happened on the morning of our first anniversary. I wanted to surprise him with a box of cupcakes, so I went to his house unannounced. When I arrived, I noticed the door was already unlocked. As I walked in, I found him lying in bed, cuddling with my friend. That was it for me. I didn't let him explain or apologize. I simply cut him out of my life completely. After the breakup, he tried contacting me by creating new accounts, but I didn't even read his messages. I blocked those accounts as well. After about 2 weeks of persistence, he gave up, and we haven't spoken since. Unfortunately, my mother, who is 46, was very attached to my ex-boyfriend. She took the news of our breakup quite hard. I suspect this might have something to do with her own past. My dad cheated on her and abandoned her while she was pregnant with me. That's just my best guess, though. When I told her about the breakup and explained that my ex had been unfaithful, she started consoling me. But instead of supporting my decision, she insisted that we were meant to be and would eventually find our way back to each other. I found her comment odd because I had no desire to have him back in my life. I broke up with him for a reason. He betrayed me with another woman. That kind of betrayal isn't something you can simply forget, even if you attempt to reconcile. There's no point in giving a cheater a second chance when you know you'll never be able to trust them again. It's better to stay apart and move on. But my mom didn't see it that way. She kept repeating her belief that we were destined to be together. Her constant remarks annoyed me to the point where I finally told her, even if we were meant to be, I'd rather stay single for the rest of my life than go back to that cheating scumbag. That seemed to shut her up, and she stopped bringing it up, at least for a while. The last time she mentioned my ex was about a month ago. A few days ago, I decided to celebrate my birthday by taking my family and a few friends out for dinner and drinks. I had been really busy with work lately and hadn't had the time to see them. I had really missed spending time with people. So today, on my birthday, I finally got all dressed up and headed out after what felt like ages. Some of my friends were already waiting for me at the venue, and I was just waiting for my aunt, cousins, and mom to arrive. A few minutes later, my aunt and her kids, who are around my age, showed up. However, when I asked about my mom, who lives with her, my aunt explained that she'd be arriving a little later. My aunt mentioned that my mom had some work to finish and had told us to start without her. I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. It was my birthday, and my own mom wasn't on time. She knows how much punctuality means to me, especially on important occasions, so this was frustrating. I believe that when you're late for significant events, it shows a lack of respect for someone else's time. My mom knows this about me, which made her tardiness even more annoying. Despite that, we decided to order food and start chatting. About half an hour later, my mom finally arrived. She walked in with a huge smile on her face, dressed to the nines, with her makeup done to perfection. It was quite unusual. My mom rarely wears makeup, and on the rare occasion she does, it's just a touch of mascara. To be honest, it almost seemed like it was her birthday instead of mine, but I brushed the thought aside. After all, she's my mom. I greeted her with a warm hug as she kissed me on both cheeks and cheerfully announced that she had a gift for me. At first, I was puzzled since she wasn't carrying any bags, just a tiny purse that could barely fit more than a lipstick and her car keys. I couldn't imagine what kind of gift she had brought. When I asked her about it, she took out her phone, made a quick call, and told whoever was on the other end to come on in. By this point, I'm sure you've guessed who it was. That's right, my ex-boyfriend walked in. He was wearing a tuxedo and looked more dashing than I remembered. My jaw nearly hit the floor. I hadn't seen him since our breakup, and now here he was, grinning at me like we were about to exchange vows. I was still trying to process what was happening when my mom gleefully shouted, "Surprise! How do you like my gift?" She stood there, beaming at me, waiting for my reaction, while everyone else I had invited looked horrified. To make matters worse, my mom had the audacity to mouth answer her at me, snapping me out of my daze. She wanted to know what I thought of her gift. I'll tell her exactly what I thought. Within seconds, I lost my temper and told her she had not only ruined my birthday with this outrageous surprise, but had also failed as a mother. I told her she clearly didn't understand me at all. If she did, she would never have done something like this. Then I added that if she liked my ex-boyfriend so much, she could keep him for herself. Judging by how she was dressed and made up, it seemed like that's what she wanted anyway. My mom's eyes filled with tears as I spoke, and the moment I finished, she broke down crying and stormed out of the restaurant. My ex stood there awkwardly for a few moments before following her out. The mood was ruined, and the atmosphere had turned incredibly uncomfortable. The rest of us decided to wrap things up quickly to avoid further awkwardness. I didn't even slice the cake my aunt had thoughtfully brought for me. Instead, she handed it over for me to take back home, and now it sits untouched in my refrigerator. The dinner itself was a swift event, and everyone left rather quickly. Honestly, I can't hold it against them. What else were they supposed to do under such circumstances? I was deeply disappointed. I had envisioned this as a memorable and joyful day, but it turned out to be anything but. Not wanting to linger in the aftermath of such an upsetting experience, I returned home earlier than planned. A few hours after arriving, I hadn't heard from anyone, until about 30 minutes ago when my aunt phoned me. She informed me that my mother hadn't returned home yet and wasn't replying to her messages or answering calls. Reluctantly, more out of a sense of duty than genuine concern, I decided to call my mom. When she answered, her voice was distant and frosty. She mentioned she was on the rooftop of her old apartment, the one she lived in for the first few years of my life, and even before that when she was with my dad. She asked me to let my aunt know not to worry, assuring me she'd be back in about an hour, and then abruptly ended the call without so much as a goodbye or thanks for checking in on her. I know she only goes to that rooftop when she's deeply distressed. She confided this to me a couple of years ago, so her being there clearly meant she was significantly hurt. While my mother has always been forgiving by nature, the curt tone of her voice during our conversation felt utterly out of character. Now, I'm beginning to wonder if I overstepped a boundary with my harsh comment about her being interested in my ex. But truthfully, it was her choice to invite him to my birthday dinner without consulting me first. I've made it abundantly clear in the past that I have zero interest in reconciling with my ex, and if she failed to understand that, it's not my responsibility. Am I the antagonist for telling my mom she could have my ex if she's so keen on him, after she brought him unannounced to my birthday dinner? Several of you have asked about my dad and our relationship, so I think it's worth explaining that part of my life. My parents met during college and dated on and off for a couple of years. My dad was never truly serious about their relationship, but my mom was fully devoted to him. She would often end up in tears whenever he interacted with other women. After graduation, they finally got together properly and moved in together. A few months later, my mom discovered she was pregnant, a surprise she chose to keep. However, my dad wasn't ready for parenthood, either emotionally or financially. He urged her not to proceed with the pregnancy, but she stood her ground and decided to have the baby. Their arguments became frequent, as he felt trapped and unprepared. My mom even told him he could leave if he wanted to. He stayed initially, likely due to pressure from his parents, who knew about the pregnancy. However, when my mom was a few months along, she caught him getting cozy with a co-worker at a nearby restaurant. That incident marked the end of their relationship. My dad relinquished his parental rights and left before I was even born. I've never had a relationship with my dad. In fact, I've never even seen him. My mother meticulously erased all traces of him from her life, including photos, leaving me with virtually no knowledge about him. The only details I know were reluctantly shared by my aunt when I turned 18. Until then, my mom had fabricated a story about my dad passing away before I was born. A few years after my birth, my mom moved in with my aunt, who was widowed after her husband's untimely passing. She did this both to support my aunt and to save money on rent. To me, family has always meant my mom, my aunt, and my cousins. It's been an entire day since the incident, and my mom and I still haven't spoken. My aunt mentioned she came home quite late last night, but I have no idea what she was doing. I don't feel inclined to apologize because what she did was unnecessary and deeply upsetting. My ex texted me from a new number, attempting to explain his side of the story. He said my mom reached out to him about a week ago, shortly after I invited her to dinner. She apparently told him she wanted to surprise me. I hadn't explicitly admitted it, but she was well aware that I still harbored feelings for him and secretly wished for reconciliation. Taking matters into her own hands, she orchestrated a reunion. It took some effort, but she eventually convinced him a few days before my birthday to join her, intending to apologize for his actions and win me back. They arrived late because he had stopped to pick up a cake for me, alongside my mother, no less. He told me it was her idea, claiming I'd adore the surprise and instantly forgive him if he showed up in a tuxedo. While that might have been true if our breakup had stemmed from a trivial disagreement, the reality was far more serious. He cheated on me. His text started with an explanation of the night, though it only made things worse. After my mom left the restaurant in tears, she asked him to drive her home since they had come together. Midway, she changed her mind and directed him to her old apartment instead, inviting him upstairs for a chat. Feeling pity for her, he agreed. They ended up talking all night. Long story short, my mother and my ex had become friends. The very thought made me nauseous. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. She knew how much pain his betrayal caused me, yet here she was, building a bond with him. How could she, of all people, justify this? Instead of standing by me, my own mother was having midnight heart-to-hearts with the man who shattered my trust. It was revolting. Worse still, it seemed she was taking my comments at the restaurant too personally. While I wanted to believe she had no ulterior motives, I couldn't shake the growing unease. Perhaps she didn't intend to claim my ex for herself, but honestly, who knew anymore? To add insult to injury, he had the audacity to tell me that my behavior toward my mother at the restaurant was unacceptable and that I owed her an apology. He went on about her struggles as a single mother, saying I should show her more respect instead of berating her in public. Seriously? The sheer nerve of it. How could he, of all people, lecture me about morality and family respect? This was the same person who betrayed me with my friend behind my back. His gall was astounding. Did he honestly believe I'd read his message and immediately apologize to my mom because he thought it was the right thing to do? Laughable. As for my mother's so-called struggles, I couldn't see what he was referring to. My mom had a stable job, as did my aunt. Growing up, my cousins and I had full-time caregivers, and our parents were never overly burdened. Sure, I might not know her emotional struggles, but there was no evidence of extreme hardship in her life. Had my ex not shared these absurd details, I might have considered apologizing to my mom. But now, not a chance. Her behavior only validated my earlier comments, and I felt no remorse for them. Later, my aunt visited, clearly uneasy and hesitant to speak. After some coaxing, she revealed an unsettling truth. My mother's fixation on my ex ran deeper than I'd imagined. She explained it all traced back to my father. Handing me old photographs, she showed me just how eerily similar my ex looked to him. The resemblance was uncanny. Same facial features, same piercing eyes, even the same bone structure. It was disturbing, to say the least. My aunt admitted that my mom noticed it too, and it might explain her bizarre attachment to him. She confessed my mom's obsession had become unhealthy, which made me more concerned than ever. When my aunt and I confronted my mom, she initially denied everything. But under pressure, she broke down, admitting she saw my ex as a connection to the man she once loved, my father. Her meltdown was heartbreaking, but her actions were inexcusable. We convinced her to block my ex on all platforms and urged her to seek therapy. Thankfully, she agreed and has started counseling. While I hope this helps her heal, I've decided to maintain some distance for now. As for my ex, I informed him about my mom's motivations. He was clueless about her past, and I only told him to ensure he wouldn't reestablish contact with either of us. So far, he stayed away, and I pray it remains that way.